This episode of Test Drive is made possible by RateMyEV.com.
A few months ago, I had my first taste of the Chevrolet Silverado EV for about a 25-minute road test, and I knew that that first drive was never going to be enough. Luckily, I've had this 2025 Chevrolet Silverado EV RST Max range for a little while now, and I have to say that I've got quite a lot of thoughts when it comes to this electric pickup truck. Now, today we're going to be going over everything about the Silverado EV, the different trims, what's coming for 2026, the power output numbers, and everything else you would need to know if you're in the market for the Silverado EV. And then we're going to talk specifically about what you get with this RST Max range, as well as how it compares to the F-150 Lightning. So let's get started to tell you what you need to know if you're in the market for a $123,000 truck. That's right, folks, $123,304 Canadian for the way that this vehicle is configured, or $100,135 USD. That does not include the luxury tax here in Canada that you're going to have to pay on that, and it doesn't include taxes at all. But for that, you're getting 740 kilometers of range, or 460 miles. Not only is that class leading in a pickup truck, but it's class leading as far as any electric vehicle that we have driven to date. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the different trims. If you want to save some money, you want to get the entry level, the work truck standard range, it's actually relatively affordable. $63,999 Canadian for the base price, or $57,095 in the US. For that, you're getting 453 kilometers of range, or 282 miles. Those numbers should be kind of familiar if you've watched our F-150 Lightning videos. It's more or less the same range that you're getting out of that truck. So if you want a vehicle with more range, you have some options when it comes to the Silverado EV. Now for 2026, so far the only major addition to the Silverado is the new Trail Boss. Now if you're unfamiliar with the Trail Boss trim on the gas versions of the Silverado, it's more of like a light off-road truck. Nothing like a ZR2, but you're getting some off-road kit to make it a little bit better if you're going on the trails, getting to the cottage, things like that. You want to have something a little different. That will be a little bit more expensive than you might expect. Starting price for that in Canada will be $89,499, or about $72,095 in the US. That you're going to get 660 kilometers of range, 410 miles. They're also going to be offering a max range version of the Trail Boss that'll start at about $107,000 Canadian, or about $88,600 in the US. You'll be getting 770 kilometers, or 478 miles of electric range. And we're going to be talking about how GM achieves that in a second. Now, normally when we talk about power numbers, I'll show you the engine. We don't have that because this is a dual motor electric setup, so we do have a front trunk area, and it is pretty spacious. Now, like I said, all models of the Silverado as of this time have the dual motor four-wheel drive setup, so they all come that way. If you're going with the work truck, the entry-level standard range has 510 horsepower, 490 pound-feet of torque. That's on the 2WT, but you can get up to 580 pound-feet of torque if you go with the 5WT or the 8WT. Now you go to the LT, that's kind of the mid-trim, 645 horsepower, 765 pound-feet of torque. Those are pretty good numbers overall. And then if you were to go with this max range RST, you're getting the absolute maximum amount of power, 760 horsepower, 785 pound-feet of torque. Now all of that is possible thanks to a 205 kilowatt-hour Ultium lithium-ion battery. Makes up the floor of this truck, and it is the biggest electric battery that we have tested to date, meaning it is also the heaviest when it comes to any of the electric vehicles. But we'll talk about a little bit more on that in a second. But before we get into that, let's talk about how the Silverado EV compares to the F-150, specifically the Lightning Platinum that I drove not too long ago. When it comes to the battery, 205 kilowatt hours on the Silverado, as I mentioned. The Lightning Platinum, 131 kilowatt hours. Overall power numbers on the Silverado, 760 horsepower, 785 pound-feet of torque. The Ford F-150 Lightning, 580 horsepower, 775 pound-feet of torque. Almost the same number of torque, but quite a bit less horsepower. But here's what's interesting. These 0 to 100 kilometer times are the same, 4.5 seconds to get you up to speed. Why is that? Well, because this weighs 9,000 pounds. The F-150 weighs less, so it doesn't need as much power to get it up to speed. So you can see it's a pretty clear indication of how power to weight ratio works. Heavier vehicle needs more power, we're getting the same 0 to 60 time. That's how it happens, because weight and power have to work together in order to make you go quick. Now, the tow rating on the Silverado, 10,000 pounds when equipped properly. Payload, though, is only about 1,500 pounds. Compare that to the F-150 Lightning. Towing is 8,500 pounds, so that's about 1,500 less. But the payload is up by about 300 pounds to 1,800. So it really depends on what you're doing with the truck. If you're putting more things inside the truck itself, in the bed or the cab, F-150 is the way to go. But if you're towing, especially with the range, you're going to want to go with the Silverado EV. Now, big change too when it comes to charging. Both vehicles do 19.2 kilowatt AC onboard charging. That's fine. You will need an 80 amp breaker at home in order to accommodate that. But DC fast charging is where things get serious. Silverado EV, 350 kilowatt maximum, whereas the F-150 Lightning is between 155 and 175. Now, yes, the Silverado EV has a much bigger battery, meaning it will take longer to charge, so having that faster charging will help if you're on a road trip. But we've talked about it before. In my opinion, 350 kilowatt DC fast charging should be the standard no matter what vehicle you're driving, especially a big vehicle. So I'd say overall, Silverado wins for that. But then how about the efficiency, the overall kilometers per kilowatt hour? Well, according to those numbers, GM's getting about 3.6 kilometers per kilowatt hour. Ford's getting 3.7. So a little bit more efficient with the F-150 Lightning on paper. But we'll talk about how the real world compares when we start our road test. Now, prior to this, I've driven like 4 F-150 Lightnings, and every time I talk about that truck, I talk about how that it is a truck first, a pickup truck first, an electric vehicle second. The GM here is the opposite. This is an electric vehicle on a purpose-built electric vehicle platform and architecture. They built the pickup truck around it. So there are a lot of things about this that are unique to the Silverado and to the Sierra EV that it is brothers with. First of all, we have four-wheel steering, something that was available 25 years ago on the very first GMC Sierra Denali Quadra-Steer. We now have that on the Silverado EV, allowing the rear wheels to turn, giving you better turning radius. But you also have the Sidewinder mode. That effectively allows you to glide from left to right. A little bit easier to pull out of maybe a tight parallel parking spot. I've actually used it a couple times in the real world, not just to show off to friends, and it does work. So you do have that option that you don't have on anything else. We also have the flexibility of the mitigate. The back of this truck, where the rear glass is, that'll come off. It'll store behind where the seats are after you've folded the seats flat, and then you can remove the back portion of your truck to open up into the bed. Now, GM says that that gives you an extra like 2 feet almost of overall cargo capacity out of the bed, which is a lot more flexibility than you get with the more standard size that you get on the F-150 Lightning. We also have a 4-level air suspension, which gives you about 2 inches of overall height change. You also saw the power opening front trunk. That's on the F-150. That's no different. This is a little bit smaller on paper. You do have power outlets up front here. And overall, there are 10 power outlets on this truck. And up front here, you do have 10.2 kilowatts of charging capabilities. So if you're putting things in there or you're using this as you're on the job site, you've got a lot of options. We also have an independent front and rear suspension. That's no different than the F-150 Lightning. We're not using leaf springs on this, but because this is such a heavy vehicle, it needs a pretty solid overall suspension setup in order to make the ride work and also for it to be able to support the weight of the truck. Now, like we're seeing on many higher end trucks, you do have a power opening lift gate. It doesn't slam down. The thing is, though, unlike the F-150, this is not power. So it'll slowly open it, but then you do have to manually close it, where the F-150 does have the power open and close, which I think is a nice plus to have. We have a 5-foot 11-inch bed, which is pretty good for this size of a truck. And then if you drop the mid-gate, as we were talking about, you get more bed space. And then because we have the multi-flex tailgate as well, this portion will open up. You do have a step here, nothing that we haven't seen before when it comes to GM products, but you could open the top portion with the tailgate down, giving you even more cargo capacity. If you've got a very long item that needs to stick out, you don't want it to roll out, options are there. You do see that on pretty much all the Chevy and GMC trucks now. Sometimes it's an option, sometimes it comes for the trim. Now, we do have bumper steps on the side here, making it a little bit easier to get into, because one of the major differences with this, as I pull up the hard tonneau cover, we don't have a grab handle. Now, that's something that you usually get with the other Silverados. It's on the side, allows you to pop it open so that you're stepping up with the multi-flex tailgate, you can get into it easier. It is not on this truck, making it maybe a little bit harder for people to get in and out of. But we do have power outlets, quite a few of them on the bed area here, which is good. One thing to note too, if you look, the wheel wells are actually different sizes because one of them has the charging components in there, so it needs to have some extra space there for that. But for the most part, it's a pretty good usable truck size. And last but not least, we do have the bed cam. It's one of the 2 cameras up in the center high mounted stoplight area. The other one for your video rear view camera mirror. All right, now that we're out of the scorching heat inside the cab here, we got a lot going on. I want to tell you about it. We have an 11-inch driver cluster screen, pretty much all the same ones that we've seen on GM's current EV vehicles. Works very well. You have a number of different customizations. You can switch between different gauge information. You have to go into the screen, though, to put, say, your trip information, but yeah, I'm not really switching between it too often, so I'll keep that there just to see what's going on. We have a 17.7-inch infotainment screen, one of the best ones in the industry in terms of overall size and responsiveness. You do not have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You must use the Google built-in services, which requires a data connection with OnStar. So you're going to be getting a small amount, 72 gigabytes for 3 years. When you purchase the truck, after that, you're going to be paying for it every month. So something to consider. Once that runs out, if you don't do it, you basically have a very nice radio in here. But it does have the 360-degree plus camera system, so cameras all around the truck, plus the one on the bed. Excellent overall quality from those, so no complaints from that. Everything's really responsive when it comes to the infotainment. I like it quite a bit, and I actually prefer this much more than the F-150's portrait style. The landscape works, it's out of the way, and don't have much to complain about outside of the subscription for OnStar, but you do get some features with it, so it's not like you're paying for nothing. It is a nice thing to have. We have a 14-inch color head-up display. We also have the video rear view camera system. A lot of people don't like to use it. I love having it. You see right through any of the passengers, any of the stuff that you've got in the trunk, to be able to see right out the back of your vehicle. Works out very well. Aside from that, though, we have 12-way power, driver, and passenger seating. We have memory seats for the driver, heated and ventilation is good on a day like today, although there is no massage function. That is something that you do get on the F-150 Lightning Platinum, so keep that in mind if you do like to be massaged a little bit as you're driving along. We have dual-zone automatic climate control, a wireless phone charger, a number of USB-C outlets, as well as a 12-volt outlet and a 120-volt outlet. Aside from that, we do have the optional fixed panoramic glass roof. There's no shade, so keep that in mind if you're thinking about buying this. It is pretty heavily tinted, but it does get a little toasty, especially if the sun's beating down right on you. So aside from having it tinted, there is no way to avoid having the sun on you, so you're going to be getting a good tan. But aside from that, though, the interior of this truck works, and surprisingly, I had said that I felt tight in this. Yes, it is a little bit tighter than a full-size Silverado gas version or the F-150 Lightning. This does feel more like the interior of a Traverse, so a larger midsize or large, crossover. That's more of the interior feel here, despite having ample room in the back. Second row seats, there's a good amount of leg room between the front. It's just the width does feel a little bit tighter, but it's actually not bad. I've come to get used to it pretty easily, and I have really no complaints about it overall. But I want to take it on the road now and talk about how this truck has been for me on this week, because I have been thoroughly impressed by it. So let's hit the road and talk about it. All right, as we head off on the road now in our Silverado EV RST, we need to talk about our energy efficiency, and there has never been a better reason than now for us to have a standard test. I always say that the number that we get isn't what you will get. It's allowing us to compare the numbers to other vehicles because we're driving it on the same course, usually in the same conditions. So I drove this Silverado EV in normal mode. The only real option is like an eco mode for the HVAC system that will lower the overall fan speed and turn off the rear vents. So I had that on. That's fine. We completed our 100 kilometer test loop in 3.4 kilometers per kilowatt hour, or just over 29 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. How does that compare to the Ford F-150 Lightning Platinum with a 131 kilowatt hour battery? So 74 kilowatt hours less. It weighs less. Yes, it has less power. That completed it in 32 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Now, you want the smallest number when you were talking about that. You want to consume the less energy to go 100 kilometers. When it's kilometers per kilowatt hour or miles per kilowatt hour, you want the most, right? You want to get the most out of each one. I truly couldn't believe that. But then again, it got me thinking that this is why this is a purpose-built electric vehicle that happens to be a pickup truck. That's the trade-off. So if you're buying a vehicle because you need a pickup truck and you want it to be electric, so you want it to be a pickup truck first, the big bed, a bed that can be removed if need be, right? Because it is separate from the body of the vehicle, then go with the F-150. But if you need an electric vehicle and you like the idea of a pickup truck, I mean, this is the way to go. I have been very, very impressed by it. I didn't think I would be. Maybe it's the habanero orange paint job on this. I'm really digging it. I thought it was going to be more like a burnt orange, kind of like a sun-dried tomato. But man, this is like in-your-face orange, and I love it. And I'm getting so much attention. As you know, I need attention. I need people to be looking at me. That's what fuels me. It gives me the power to go and do more videos. I need people looking at me, and so many people are. I guarantee the people coming here in the Subaru, in the van here, they're all looking at this truck because A, it's bright orange, and B, you're not seeing too many of them on the road still. I did pass one just before I started filming. We did the introduction stuff like a couple minutes ago. On my way to go film that, I saw another Silverado EV. I don't see too many of them. So it's rare to see it, but it's also pretty rare to see a pickup truck in this color. Now, like with a lot of electric vehicles, you don't get all the power all the time, right? It's meant to be in reserve in case you really do need it. Because really, I mean, who needs 760 horsepower out of an electric vehicle, out of any vehicle, let alone a pickup truck? So I'm currently doing much less than the speed limit. We're not in the WTF or WOW mode right now, but if I floor it, yeah, it picks up speed really quickly. I have actually quite a bit of torque steer going in both directions, but yes, we get up to speed with no issues whatsoever. But that's not the whole reason why we're doing this. We want to see how fast this thing can go. Will it blow my socks off the same way I was scared when I drove the Hummer EV? Well, let's find out. So we pull over here, we go into our drive modes, we push the fun button, makes a lot of noise, and then, oh my God, holy Christ, that's fast. That's not as quick as the Hummer. The Hummer scared me, but whoa, man, that is, that's up to speed very fast, very, very quick. You really do not need that much power. So I'm going to turn that off. It should turn off automatically anyway. You're only going to get it for a little bit, but you can do it, often as you need. Yeah, I think my tripod, you could actually hear it hit the back of the bed as it flew away. So yeah, tons of power with this thing. Do you need that? No. I mean, day-to-day stuff from driving around here, I've had absolutely zero issues getting up to speed. It has been thoroughly enjoyable. So you do have that if you want to show off, if you really do need to pass traffic, whatever maybe the option is there. It's just kind of going into it. To get to it, you got to do it, and then you hear the sound and all that makes all that noise. Same thing with the Sidewinder mode. So as we go over these train tracks here, which will probably obliterate the suspension on this truck because this is so heavy, Sidewinder mode is a very similar thing too. You go into the system here, you tell it that you want to do Sidewinder. Every single time it plays its little thing. Every time, every single time. Only thing I can think of is because it's got to change the configuration of the wheels in order for us to be able to effectively, look, we're like strafing, right? We going left and right. It says you can do it up to like 32 kilometers. It's like 20 miles or something. So you can actually be going relatively quick to do it. The only reason I can really think that it wastes your time every time with the little intro video and sound is because it's got to engage and it doesn't want you to do anything until it's done. I really wish there was a way to turn it off because it's super annoying. The 2 times that I've actually used it in the real world, it was like, I need it now. I don't need it in 10 seconds once it's gone through its stupid cycle. Same thing with the air suspension. It took like a minute for it to go up the 2 inches that it needed to. So things are a little slower here, but maybe that's the idea behind it because the truck's so fast, everything else can be a little bit slower. But it is nice to have. I mean, if you needed it, it's a cool feature. something that you don't get on the F-150 Lightning. Overall ride and drive has been great. I mean, this is a heavy truck. We have heavy-duty suspension in order to support it. The air suspension helps a little bit with that, but it's been very comfortable going over any rough roads, going over those train tracks. You're still feeling it like you would with any other pickup truck, but it has been very good. And then the overall handling, I mean, this is still a very top-heavy vehicle in the sense that you feel like you're sitting high up, but because the battery packs make up the floor, the center of gravity is actually quite low. So it's deceiving, even though it does feel very heavy. It's actually not very bad overall when it comes to the center of gravity. So you could chuck it into a corner if you wanted to. I'm not going to tip this truck over, but what I do like is the rear steering. It makes things quite a lot easier getting into parking lots and driving around, even getting into my driveway. It's nice to be able to have that extra little oomph from the rear wheels to be able to turn you around. So yeah, I mean, there's really not much to complain about. Oh yeah, the performance though is excellent. Even with Super Cruise, look, we're not even on a highway here. This is like a regional road. It's a busy road, but it's a regional road, and Super Cruise is now enabled on here. GM says by the end of this year, I believe, they're going to have 750,000 miles of Super Cruise enabled roads. And now it's actually built into Google Maps. So if you set your destination, Google Maps will show you'll have a blue line for your destination, but in the middle will be a white line. That's your Super Cruise enabled stuff. And I have to say that it has been, pretty much the whole drive here was Super Cruise enabled. It showed me on the map, hey, you're basically hands-free the entire time. And it works. It's the best system on the planet. We've talked about it plenty of times. If you want a hands-free, semi-autonomous drive mode, Super Cruise is the king. It is the class leader. It is the one setting the bar when it comes to hands-free driving. Nobody does it better. So overall, I mean, everything about this has surprised me thoroughly. It's a truck that I like a whole lot more than I thought I would. And I would actually buy it in this color. There's a couple nice sort of blues and blue-gray. I like blue. Blue's a good color. But man, there's something about this orange. Maybe it's just the attention that I'm getting because it's so bright and so big, right? This is such a huge vehicle to be in such a flashy color. Plus, it's like almost two-tone with the black trim around the wheel wells, the bottom, and then a little bit around the roof. Like, it's almost a full two-tone, kind of David S. Pumpkin style here with the orange and black. But I'm digging this build. It's going to be tough now because I was so firm in my belief that the F-150 Lightning was the truck for me. If I had the money and I was ready to buy an electric pickup truck, I was like, yeah, F-150, it's comfortable, it's spacious, it's got everything that you want out of an F-150, just happens to be electric. Why would I consider anything else? And now I've spent 7 days in this, and I have to say that this is the one I take. Considering it's the same price. I mean, the F-150 Lightning Platinum, when we featured it, was like, okay, it's like $116,000 now, right? So this is like $8,000 more. But for $8,000, not only are you getting what I would argue to be a better interior and more functionality with the mid-gate and having the air suspension and the four-wheel steering, but you're getting the range. And that's the killer. Yes, you got to charge it up. At home, if this thing was empty, to charge up 200 kilowatts will take me more than a day, right? Because I'm charging at about 7 kilowatts per hour. So yeah, it's going to take a while to get this thing fully charged up. But I think it's worth it because most people, you're not going to be using it. I mean, realistically, if I didn't charge this thing up, I got home with like 64% battery, I could do my whole week with this and drive it back to Mississauga and not ever have to charge it. I would then because obviously it's empty, but I don't have to worry about it. I don't charge this at home. I just park it because there's so much range. Even right now, 93%. I've been driving around. We did the watts to freedom or wide open watts, whatever you want to call it. We did that. That got us still 704 kilometers. Every time I turn it on, because I do charge it at home, I'm not silly. I might want to go on a road trip. It is 740 kilometers that it estimates. So it's not only giving you the amount that I expect based on what GM says it'll do, it's more efficient than I expected. It's more comfortable. It's more capable. Yeah, good job, GM. I'm thoroughly impressed. I hated the Equinox, but yeah, you guys really nailed it when it comes to the truck. It's like this is the one that you guys cared about, and it shows. But it's more than just driving it for a week. It's about owning it for number of years, whether you're leasing it or financing it. That's where we can't answer your questions because we don't have it for that long. That's where a website like ratemyev.com is critical when you're buying an electric vehicle such as this Silverado EV. That's where owners can post their own reviews of the vehicles, talk about things like the range, any issues with it, rattles, things like that. Is it charging the way that it's supposed to? Have you had any major problems with it? Has it been in for recalls or unexpected service, things like that? RateMyEV.com is the place to find that information that journalists just can't provide because we don't have these vehicles long enough. So not only will you find reviews about every vehicle that you can think of in the EV world, but we encourage you to write your own, leave your own thoughts too. If you own an electric vehicle, let others know so that they're better informed, because we always say, whether you're buying an EV, a plug-in, a hybrid, any kind of vehicle, you got to do your research first. And RateMyEV.com is the way to make sure that you get all of that information, more information than we could ever provide you in a week. So check them out. Big thanks to them for sponsoring all of our electric vehicle content here on Test Drive. But yeah, that's it, guys. I mean, I love this truck. I don't think I'm going to give it back. I'm just going to ask GM, let me know how much I owe you. I'm going to give you a check and I'll buy it, because I can't believe how impressed I've been with this. As always, if you have any questions about this Silverado EV or anything else that we're doing here on Test Drive, please get to us in the comments. I do try to get back to everybody. You can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. That helps us get to our next milestone. And let us know what you'd like to see next. We're always trying to book different things and see what works and what doesn't. So let us know what you're interested in the most, and we'll do our best to make that happen. As always, we appreciate you watching. And until next time, take care.